Windows forces an update. 45 minutes later, your Discord is blowing up and you're still staring at this screen, working on updates, 73%. Now, just a few weeks ago, Microsoft's first update of 2026 bricked thousands of PCs.
The Microsoft empire is officially in a state of free fall. We're tracking a global, cascading rejection of Windows 11 that has just wiped a staggering $180 billion off Microsoft's market valuation in a single blood-soaked trading session. This isn't just a bad software update, and it's not a temporary dip in the tech cycle. This is the beginning of a historic collapse for the most dominant operating system in human history. For decades, Windows was the air that global business breathed. It was unavoidable, unshakable, and for Microsoft, infinitely profitable. But that era ended this morning. The numbers coming out of Redmond's Q3 earnings call are nothing short of catastrophic. Windows revenue has plummeted by 18% year over year. To put that in perspective, in a world where tech growth is expected to be exponential, Microsoft just saw nearly a fifth of its core business vanish into thin air in just 12 months. During the call, CFO Amy Hood attempted to manage the carnage, citing market dynamics and refresh cycle timing. It was the standard corporate playbook for everything is fine. But Wall Street wasn't buying the spin. When a Goldman Sachs analyst pushed for the truth, asking how much of this decline was due to enterprises flat-out refusing to touch Windows 11, the room went silent. The silence was the answer. Hood eventually admitted to deployment delays in key segments. In the world of high-stakes tech journalism, we call that a translation for total institutional rejection. The market reacted with a 7% after-hours crash. As we speak, leaked internal documents are circulating from IT departments across the Fortune 500. They aren't just delaying the upgrade, they are drafting migration plans to leave the Microsoft ecosystem entirely. The Windows 11 global revolt has moved from a subreddit grievance to a boardroom reality. While Redmond scrambles to reassure investors, the first major domino has already fallen on the international stage. In a move that has paralyzed Microsoft's Asian enterprise strategy, the South Korean government has issued a total migration directive. This is the death knell for Windows in one of the world's most tech-forward nations. The South Korean Ministry of Science and ICT didn't just suggest an alternative, they mandated a purge. By the end of 2026, over 1.2 million government workstations will be wiped clean of Microsoft software. Why? Because the Korean government has officially deemed Windows 11 unfit for sovereign operation. The official reasons are a laundry list of failures. First, the Korean language input system, the very fundamental way an entire nation communicates, is reportedly broken on the new operating system. Second, the performance overhead is so bloated that existing government hardware can't keep up. But the third reason is the one that should terrify every Windows user. South Korea has ruled that the mandatory Microsoft account requirement and the operating system's aggressive telemetry violate their national data sovereignty laws.
Microsoft didn't take this lying down. They sent a high-level executive delegation to Seoul, offering unprecedented concessions. They promised a special government edition with telemetry stripped out. They offered massive bottom-of-the-barrel pricing discounts. They even promised to fix the language bugs within weeks. Seoul's answer? A definitive cold no. The Korean government has already sunk $340 million into their own solution, Harmony KR. It's a custom-built Linux distribution based on Ubuntu, hardened for national security and optimized for the Korean language. They have already trained 18,000 IT staff on Linux administration. This isn't a threat, it's a finished transition. And where the government goes, industry follows. Samsung is currently testing Linux on 80,000 workstations. LG is evaluating Ubuntu for 35,000 systems. Hyundai is piloting Linux for its engineering hubs. When the 10th largest economy in the world decides your software is a security risk, you don't just lose a client, you lose the region. If the situation in Korea is about sovereignty, the situation in Australia is about legal survival. We are witnessing a mass exodus within the Australian healthcare sector that is effectively blacklisting Windows 11 from the medical profession. The Royal Melbourne Hospital, a titan of Australian medicine, recently ran a pilot program for Windows 11 on 200 workstations. What they found was a privacy nightmare. Despite the hospital's IT team disabling the controversial recall feature, the system was caught phantom tasking, taking background screenshots that included sensitive patient records and medical histories. Under the Australian Privacy Act, this isn't just a glitch, it's a criminal liability. The hospital's legal department determined that Windows 11's AI-driven architecture, specifically Copilot, was transmitting medical data snippets to Microsoft servers for processing without explicit patient consent. The fallout was immediate. Royal Melbourne, St. Vincent's in Sydney, and Royal Adelaide Hospital have all halted Windows 11 deployments. They are now actively migrating a combined 47,000 workstations to Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Think about the gravity of that. Doctors and nurses are switching to Linux, not because they want to be techie, but because Windows has become a liability to their Hippocratic oath. They've found that a locked-down Linux environment has zero compliance issues, higher performance, and significantly lower licensing costs. The NHS in the UK and the Canadian healthcare system are now watching this Australian pilot with intense interest. If the NHS follows suit, we are looking at millions of seats disappearing from Microsoft's balance sheet. Windows 11 has achieved the impossible. It has made the world's most conservative industry, healthcare, view Linux as the safer choice. The walls are closing in on big tech. What we are seeing isn't just a software bug, it's a fundamental shift in how the world views data and control. If you want to stay ahead of the collapse and find out which platforms are actually safe to use in this new era, you need to be part of this community. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. We are tracking the documents Microsoft doesn't want you to see, and you won't want to miss our next deep dive into the Linux sovereign movement.
While the West focuses on AI features, the Global South is focusing on sovereign computing. No country illustrates this better than Brazil. In February 2025, the Brazilian government launched a project that is arguably the most ambitious software migration in history. Targeting 2.8 million government computers, Brazil is moving to Linux Soberano. This isn't just about avoiding a buggy operating system, it is a direct response to the aggressive data harvesting architecture of Windows 11. Brazil watched as the US government pressured tech companies for access to foreign data, and they decided they'd had enough. Windows 11's always online requirement was the final straw. Brazilian officials realized that a nation's government cannot function on an operating system that acts as a continuous data pipe to a corporation in Redmond, Washington. It is a national security risk of the highest order. The migration is already gutting Microsoft's presence in the country. Petrobras, the state-owned oil giant, is moving 45,000 systems. The Bank of Brazil is evaluating a 78,000-seat migration. This is a total decoupling. Brazil is a nation of 215 million people, one of the world's 10 largest economies, and it is systematically deleting Microsoft from its infrastructure. They are proving that digital sovereignty isn't just a buzzword, it's a policy that involves thousands of miles of code and millions of users. But if Brazil is moving fast, China is moving at warp speed. For years, the Great Reset of Chinese IT has been a slow burn project. Windows 11 just poured gasoline on the fire. In April 2025, China's Cyberspace Administration issued a new mandate. All government agencies and state-owned enterprises must complete their Windows migration by December 2027. They cut their original timeline by 18 months. Why the rush? Because the Chinese government's audit of Windows 11's kernel revealed unacceptable levels of telemetry that cannot be fully disabled by the user. We are talking about 62 million computers. This is the largest single market exit in the history of the software industry. Microsoft is losing approximately $8 billion in annual revenue from the Chinese market over the next 3 years. And it's not just the public sector. The Chinese private sector, the Alibabas, the Tencents, the ByteDances, are all following the state's lead. Alibaba has already migrated 140,000 employees to Deepin, a Chinese-developed Linux operating system. These companies have realized that relying on American proprietary software in the current geopolitical climate is a risk they can no longer afford. When the world's second-largest economy decides your product is a Trojan horse, there is no marketing campaign in the world that can save you. While China and Brazil are leaving for security reasons, the European Union is preparing to fine Microsoft out of existence. The European Commission is currently conducting a GDPR compliance review of Windows 11, and the preliminary findings are a disaster for Redmond. Leaked documents suggest the EU has found that Windows 11 violates GDPR in 4 fundamental ways. First, data collection without granular consent. Second, the transmission of personal metadata to US servers without adequate safeguards. Third, the dark patterns used to prevent users from opting out of tracking. And fourth, the lack of architectural transparency regarding the recall and Copilot subsystems. If the final ruling lands as expected, Microsoft is looking at a $10 billion fine, 4% of their global revenue. But the money is the least of their worries. The EU has the power to order Windows 11 withdrawn from the European market entirely until it complies. European businesses aren't waiting for the court's decision. They see the writing on the wall. In the first quarter alone of 2025, German companies deployed 340,000 Linux systems. In France, 180,000 seats were migrated. The European business world is proactively abandoning Windows 11 to avoid the massive legal liability that comes with an operating system that can't stop spying on its users. Perhaps the most shocking part of this story is that the revolt isn't just happening abroad, it's happening in the skyscrapers of Manhattan and the tech hubs of Silicon Valley.
Internal documents from 83 Fortune 500 companies, some of Microsoft's oldest and most loyal customers, reveal a coordinated effort to break the Windows monopoly. A leaked memo from a Fortune 50 tech giant states, Windows 11 creates unacceptable risks. Performance degradation is costing us thousands of man-hours. Directive: all Windows 11 deployments are halted. Evaluate Mac and Linux alternatives for 40% of the workforce. 40%. That's 38,000 users in a single company moving off Windows. The reasons cited across these 83 companies are remarkably consistent. They are tired of the hardware requirements forcing them to junk perfectly good computers. They are tired of the recall security flaws. And most of all, they are tired of an operating system that feels more like an advertising billboard than a professional tool. If even half of these Fortune 500 companies execute their exit plans, Microsoft will lose millions of enterprise users in its home market. This represents a $1.2 billion hole in annual US revenue. The message from the American corporate world is clear. Windows 11 costs more and delivers less. For the first time in 30 years, the business case for Windows has vanished. If you want to know when a platform is truly dead, don't look at the users, look at the developers. The people who build the software we use every day are the canaries in the coal mine. According to Stack Overflow's June 2025 data, Windows usage among professional developers has crashed to 38.2%. This is down from 53% just a year ago. For the first time in history, Windows is on the verge of falling to second place behind macOS, with Linux closing the gap at 27%. Why does this matter? Because developers build for the platforms they use. If the architects of the future are working on Macs and Linux boxes, they will prioritize those versions. We are already seeing the Mac-first era. Tools like Figma, Linear, and Superhuman are launching on macOS months or even years before a Windows version is even considered. Windows 11 has driven the very people who sustain the ecosystem away. Without developers, Windows doesn't have a future, it has a legacy. It becomes a legacy platform, like the mainframe, used only because people haven't figured out how to leave yet.
All of this tension culminated on June 18, 2025, at Bill Gates' private estate outside Seattle. This wasn't a standard board meeting, it was a survival session. According to sources close to the meeting, Gates was visibly shaken by the global data. He reportedly told the room, "We are losing Windows. This isn't a PR problem, it's an existential crisis." Gates' solution was radical. Admit Windows 11 failed. Kill it and start building Windows 12 from scratch with a privacy-first architecture. He argued for a total return to performance and user control, the very things that made Windows 95 and Windows 7 legendary. But Satya Nadella and the current executive team reportedly resisted. They argued that admitting failure would destroy the stock price. They are doubling down on AI and cloud integration, believing that Copilot will eventually win the world back. The meeting ended with no consensus. The leadership is paralyzed. Half the company wants to fix the foundations. The other half wants to keep building the skyscraper higher, even as the ground turns to mud. While they argue, the world keeps migrating. So where does this leave us? As of July 2025, Windows' overall market share has dipped to 62.3%. It has officially fallen below the 65% monopoly threshold. Once a platform falls below that number, the network effect begins to work in reverse. Hardware manufacturers start focusing on Linux drivers. Software houses stop testing for Windows first. The default status that Microsoft spent 40 years building is evaporating in real time. Windows' revenue is projected to drop by 40% by 2028, but the cascade effect is worse. If you lose Windows, you lose the on-ramp to Office 365. You lose the default preference for Azure. You lose the entire ecosystem. We are looking at a total revenue impact of $60 billion annually by the end of the decade. The truth is, Microsoft isn't advertising the fact that Korea banned them. They aren't talking about the Brazilian sovereign move or the Australian healthcare exodus. They hope you won't connect the dots, but the dots are connected. Windows 11 wasn't just a bad OS, it was a bridge too far. It was the moment Microsoft decided that your data belonged to them and your hardware was just a rental, and the world has responded with a resounding no. This is the largest shift in the history of computing, and it's happening right under our noses. But I want to hear from the front lines. Have you made the switch yet? Are you one of the thousands moving to Linux, or are you holding on to a Mac for dear life? Maybe you're still on Windows 10, refusing to hit that update button. Drop a comment below, and I want to know which operating system you're betting on for 2026. Share this video with anyone who is still being forced to use Windows 11 at work. They need to know they aren't alone in the revolt. I'm your host, and this is the end of the Windows era. We'll see you in the next one.